Brian Flores on February 1 filed a landmark lawsuit against the NFL and three specific teams, the Broncos, the Giants, and the Dolphins, alleging racial discrimination in the hiring, the compensation, and the retention of black head coaches. There has been some talk that maybe others would be joining him. Under the scheduling order that was crafted by the court presiding over the action, Flores will file an amended complaint on April 8. I am told, Chris, that the amended complaint will include 2 new plaintiffs, 2 new teams with allegations of wrongful failure to hire on the basis of race, with allegations directed at the owners of the 2 new teams that will be more than just the run-of-the-mill stuff, that there'll be something there that creates some headlines. Now, that's all I know. It's all I know for now. But come April 8, we'll know, if not sooner, who the new plaintiffs are, who the new teams are, and we'll get a sense of how much more complicated this is all going to be for the NFL. But, you know, when Flores did it, the first thought was, well, who else is going to join him? Well, nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. Well, 2 more are ready to do it, and we're going to find out who they are soon enough.
I know. It gives us, more credibility is what it's going to do. Not that I didn't think it was credible from Brian Flores, because he's a no-nonsense, no BS guy. I could tell you that from being around him in my life, where this is real. But we all looked at it a little bit. I think everybody has, he's disgruntled. He feels like he's been cheated. This is a renegade-type move. Oh, my gosh, he might be hurt, with future jobs in the NFL. Well, good job by Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, making sure he's not, standing out there by himself. They hire him, all right, so get him a part of that. But now you add these 2 people. I mean, then the NFL, we know they had a problem on their hand, but this is going to become more of a problem. You're looking at a, potential firestorm here. Again, you're going to have 2 other coaches. I would expect them, of course, to be African-American, and they're going to give more instances of, little insights about what's going on behind the curtains in the NFL organizations. And that's not a good look for the NFL. And, of course, then going to portray some feelings and some thoughts they have, certainly felt like have been directed that way because they are looked at as the minority candidate. So the NFL's got a problem on their hand, and this certainly is not going to help it with two more people joining on with Flores.
And this problem has been hiding in plain sight for years. It was nearly 20 years ago that the NFL, under the threat of litigation, this very litigation, not this one specifically, but this type of litigation, created the Rooney Rule. To avoid the litigation, they knew they had a problem. The hiring practices, the raw numbers are so stark that the only reasonable conclusion is there's some sort of bias baked into the process. Not that you've got a bunch of Archie Bunkers sitting around in their easy chairs spouting off racist nonsense. There's just at some level a preference, at some level a bias, at some level an inclination to hire a white coach. As I said when Brian Flores sued, if you flip a coin 500 times and it comes up heads 490 times, there's a problem with the coin. Now, everything else is details, and there will be plenty of details. We have already heard some of the specific allegations involving the Broncos, involving the Giants, the claim that supposedly lit this fuse for Brian Flores, the idea that he got the accidental text message from Bill Belichick congratulating him on getting the Giants job, and it turns out he got the wrong Brian in his phone.
Yeah.
Belichick was asked about it today at the league meetings. They do a little press conference, breakfast type thing. It's kind of awkward because people are trying to eat and you want to ask me questions. Let me eat first. But Belichick says he can't comment on it, which is really all he can say. He's not inclined to talk anyway. He's definitely not going to talk about a pending legal issue.
He's not going to tell you
now,
he woke up from a nap and he couldn't see the phone clearly and couldn't figure out what Brian it was.
Now, John Mara said yesterday that there's no way Bill Belichick would have had advanced knowledge as to who they were going to hire, but it's Bill Belichick. I mean, if anybody's going to know, it's him, right?
100%. With the Giants and everything there, yes. I mean, Bill Belichick's the godfather of the NFL, for one. And he's certainly, deep-rooted in the history of the New York Giants, and there is a relationship there between the Maras and Belichick. We know that. And there was a lot of rumors, a few years back, and I think you even heard of them. We talked about them not too long ago, where, if there was one place Belichick would ever leave the Patriots for, it was the Giants. We know there was some communication between the Giants when the Joe Judge hire went down there. I don't know how far or how in-depth it was, but I know there was some communication there for sure. So this would not be shocking for me to know. And, of course, yes, it's two former coaches of Bill Belichick. I would think the Maras and the Giants had called Belichick to ask about both guys a little bit and get a feel to where I would think Bill would have knowledge about who was going to be hired there. And the Giants kind of passing that by him to, hear his last little knowledge or 2 cents about that situation. So I totally would expect him to have that knowledge. I would have.
It really doesn't take much for there to be one person in the Giants organization to give Bill Belichick a heads up.
Definitely
what they're planning to do.
Right.
And they can say, well, we didn't even interview. Look, they know what these teams know what they're going to do before they do it when it comes to these things. They don't engage in a pristine process of gathering information, and then only after it's all completed do they commence the process of knowing which way they're going to go. I mean, Joe Schoen, the new GM, came from Buffalo with Brian Daboll. I remember there was at one point, John Mara was saying, well, they issued a statement or it was something like, well, we would never do that without actually meeting with him. Your new GM worked with him. I mean, this isn't like a blind date. He already worked with him, for crying out loud.
Right. You're right. This is the route they wanted to go. They had a preconceived plan, and yes, probably knew a little bit about Joe Schoen. And then, of course, knew about Brian Daboll and went, wait, we'd like to go down this road, and we'll go down it as long as, Schoen doesn't really mess up the interview or Daboll doesn't totally, pee down his pants during our interview to where, okay, so you're right. Most of these teams have a good feel or at least have it narrowed down to a very few a short list of guys, one or two candidates to go, we've done our due diligence at the end of the year, talk to people, all that. We kind of know it's one of these two guys, coaches, one of these two guys, GMs, and okay, any way it goes from there is good. So, yes, they do have a preconceived notion like you've talked about, and I would have a hard time thinking Belichick wouldn't have a good clue about what the Giants were going to do directly from the Mara family, directly from John, I would think, really.
And John Mara was asked yesterday whether he's inclined to settle the case. Again, the Giants specifically sued by Flores for not hiring him, for hiring Brian Daboll instead. What Mara said is not settling it because the allegations are false. We're very comfortable with our hiring process. It was a fair process, and we ended up making the decision that we made based on a lot of factors, none of which had to do with race. And that last part really struck a chord with me because, Chris, I handled cases like this when I was practicing law. No one ever admits that the decision that's being challenged had anything to do with the protected characteristic. It didn't have anything to do with race. Didn't have anything to do with gender. Didn't have anything to do with religion. Didn't have anything to do with the fact that he made complaints to OSHA about unsafe working conditions. Didn't have anything to do with the fact that he filed a workers' comp claim that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we think that it wasn't real. They're never going to admit that. That's what makes these cases so difficult, because what do you need? You need circumstantial evidence to otherwise prove that what they're saying isn't 100% truthful. And in this case, you got the facts, you got the history, you got the hiring practices of the NFL. That's why, this case has been waiting to be filed. It's been begging to be filed. No one was willing to trade in their career for it. And that's why I'm encouraged by, because at the end of the day, I just want justice to be done. I'm encouraged by the fact that more coaches are willing to advance what they believe are legitimate claims, because if every black head coach who's been passed over for a head coaching job that he was qualified to have would join this, you can't retaliate against all of them. You can't keep all of them from becoming head coaches at some point in the future. If it's just one, well, it's not really a fit here. We did a fair process, but we've decided to go in a different direction. They just pass the buck around until Brian Flores is old enough to retire. But if you got 2, 5, 10, 15, however many, it becomes impossible to play that game with all of them. So there's strength in numbers in that regard. Not just makes the claims more credible, it insulates all of them against the possibility that they're all going to be blackballed by the NFL.
Yeah, and strength in numbers, like you said, and as long as it's not like, fantasized or like there's real tangible things there. Again, I don't think it's going to look at nobody's going to look at these African American coaches or anything like that. I don't think they're going to be hurt by it ultimately too. I think that the rest of the coaching fraternity is going to pick them up to a degree a little bit and realize white coaches as well and go, there's some things here that are messed up. This is real. Like, it's real. We're not going to blackball this coach because he got on a lawsuit and not hire him, even though we need a great, offensive coordinator or DB coach or whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is real. To your point, I think there's very many people that realize that. The NFL's recognize that. The white coaches in the NFL recognize that. And also, too, just to piggyback a little bit with what we were talking about, the Maras, and you said it earlier, too. I don't think these owners are looking at it going like, I don't want to hire the black guy. I think, to what you said earlier, the NFL is just so deep-rooted in its whiteness, especially in the front office and the coaching. And it's third and fourth generation family members in there. And there's just a lot of connections there. And to me, that is one of the biggest issues, too. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or whatever. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. And I think that's what, ultimately hurts a lot of African-American coaches, too. They don't have the guy, the liaison, to get in the owner's ear to go, hey, I know this guy. I know what he's all about. I knew his dad. I knew his granddaddy. He works like this. He does that. And that's the advantage so many of these white coaches have right now. And that's where it's unfair, at least in my opinion, to a degree.
For a lot of the older white owners, too, it's not about being uncomfortable with the black candidate. It's being more comfortable.
That's right, Mike. That's a good way to say it, too. Yes.
Right.
Both
are qualified, but we're more comfortable with this guy. And they never stop to think why. And over time, the examples keep piling up, and it becomes obvious what the common thread is in these situations. Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coach who hired Brian Flores to be an assistant coach on the defensive side of the ball, I think inside linebackers and special assistant defense. It's not head coach, obviously, but he's on the staff.
Yeah.
Tomlin said, I wanted to stay close to Brian when his legal issues started. I just didn't want him to feel like he was on an island. From a coaching fraternity standpoint, I owed him that. I was in a position to provide that. There's so many ways that he's going to help us and help me. His contributions are going to be significant. And look, it was a bold move. I mean, it had to be done. I mean, this guy should be a head coach. So, of course, he's qualified to be an assistant. But this really is just a little bit of breaking ranks by the Steelers here. When you consider the strong allegations being made by Flores against the Dolphins, against the Broncos, against the Giants, and the Giants and the Steelers have deep ties going back forever. They got family members that married.
Right.
The actress Rooney Mara, that first name wasn't pulled out of the air. Her first name's Rooney, for crying out loud. Right. So that shows you how close the two families are. And you got one that's the target of these allegations and saying that they're false and we're not going to settle. You got the other saying to the guy who's making the allegations, come on, we got you. We know it's going to be tough on you. We'll give you safe harbor here. Hey, I'm telling you, at some level, John Mara is not, he's never going to admit it publicly. At some level, he's got to be wondering what's going on here. This guy's coming after me. He's making up lies about our organization, and you're giving him a job.
Yeah.
And now again, he's not going to say it, but at some level, he's got to be thinking it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. You're right. It's an awkward situation. It is. Mike Tomlin cares about people. He's certainly going to have sympathy about an African-American coach. He knows the struggles that go on there. I'm sure he can respect Brian Flores' stance, knows that's real along with it, and then has the support, again, of the Rooney family, like we talked about. We know the Rooney rule hasn't been going as well as we'd all like, but it is the Rooney rule for a reason. They've been leading the charge to get minority candidates to become head coaches. So good on them and the Pittsburgh organization to help Brian Flores out, give Mike Tomlin the confidence to make the move. He's a very well-qualified coach like you talked about. It's not like they're getting some guy to, hold the pom-poms over there on the sidelines. This guy knows what he's talking about. He fits the Steelers' attitude. But, yes, I think that, maybe you're right. Maybe the next Thanksgiving dinner, it could be a little uncomfortable when this conversation comes up between the Mara and the Rooneys.
But the Steelers are a prime example of walking the talk, and I think it helps.
That's right.
The name comes from Dan Rooney. They were ready to hire Russ Grimm early 2007. I remember Pittsburgh Tribune Review. Russ Grimm's the next coach of the Steelers. Something happened on the way to that contract being finalized. that pivoted the Steelers toward Mike Tomlin to give credence and breathe life into this rule that carries Dan Rooney's name. And look, I don't know how Russ Grimm would have done as a Steelers head coach, but I think they got it right. I got a feeling they got it right with Mike Tomlin, who's still there 15 years later and going strong.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.